Hello, good morning everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. To begin this morning, a major step towards a final peace agreement for Colombia was reached Tuesday in Havana, Cuba. Now, the delegations of the Colombian government and the FARC guerrillas, they closed a deal on what is considered the heart of the peace process. After over a year of negotiations, one of the most controversial issues agreed were the transitional justice mechanisms to judge crimes committed by FARC guerrilla members. Despite criticism from right-wing politicians, the victims expressed their satisfaction with the agreement.
Today we are defending our dignity and our demand that the agreements be faithful to the claims of all the victims. Our backing of the peace process does not mean that we renounce justice, reparation, and above all, truth.
And one of the most important commitments reached was the guerrillas' promise to provide material support to the victims.
Something very important, the FARC committed for the first time in their history to contribute to material reparations for victims.
Hundreds of workers took to the streets of Caracas to protest against the political opposition's intention of privatizing the state-owned CAN TV telephone company. President Nicolás Maduro, he greeted the crowd and he promised that the opposition would not be allowed to rule the country based on their majority in parliament. Maduro describes the strategy by the opposition as an electoral coup, as the opposition has announced it will try to revert strategical nationalizations in some key sectors.
Don't believe that it will stay like this. No, it won't stay like this. We're going to change this situation, and we will not allow the right to consolidate its electoral coup. So I say, we will not allow it, that the right achieve, consolidate its fascist electoral coup.
And in Brazil, the Supreme Court will issue a key ruling on the impeachment process against President Dilma Rousseff soon. Now, the Supreme Court halted last week an impeachment process against Rousseff launched in Brazil's lower house due to possible irregularities. The court will now decide how the impeachment process should be carried to avoid unconstitutional procedures. This year, the Honduran government has received 2 unfavorable international sentences due to demands of violations against the justice system and the right of the ethnic groups of the protection of their territory.
This year, the Honduran government has lost 2 important cases in the Inter-American Human Rights Court. The first one was about 4 judges that were suspended for being against the 2009 coup d'etat that ousted President Manuel Zelaya. And the second case relates to the Garifuna communities that had been expelled of their territory for touristic projects. In both cases, the International Court has decided that the Honduran state abused its power.
In these last 2 cases, the one of the judges for instance, it is important to generate jurisprudence to finally establish the role of judges in the protection of the rights of freedom of speech, of the defense of the state of the law and of democracy. Another very important sentence is one on territorial rights. This will be one of the most important sentences of the Inter-American Human Rights Court because it has to do with the current situation of dispossession that people are suffering of their territory, their resources, of natural resources.
The cases don't have solutions in the national justice system. That is where they should be solved. People, groups, and communities have no justice in the country because, as we have mentioned, there is no efficient justice system, and therefore they have to go to international justice system, the Inter-American Court in the case of Honduras, and what the system does is opening lawsuits and doing the procedures based on legitimate demands from these groups, and as a consequence, we have what we expected, sentences that condemn the Honduran state.
The international justice is beginning to listen to the hundreds of demands presented by the people of Honduras who have been suffering of human rights abuses since the military coup against democracy more than 6 years ago. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Republican candidates in the United States held their fifth televised debate. Now, the debate focused largely on foreign policy and the fight against the Islamic State, but candidates also focused on migration in relation with terrorism. Now, as usual, the leading Republican candidate, Donald Trump, was the center of attention. Trump received some harsh criticism by his rivals, but also the media was held accountable for its excessive coverage on the candidate.
I think it's been all about ratings and saying outrageous things, and way more than half of the entire coverage the media has given to the Republican candidates has been about Donald Trump. The more outrageous and stupid things he says, the more media attention he gets, and it is impacting the race. They are also limiting the impact of the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary, because there you talk to the voters, not on TV, but across the table. That's retail politics. That's the best way to select a leader for our country.
Russian President Vladimir Putin, he met with the Secretary of State of the United States, John Kerry, in Moscow. Now, both leaders discussed ways in which to cooperate in the fight against the Islamic State in Syria. Despite differences between both countries, they do remain. Moscow and Washington are working together to hold talks between opposition groups and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Delegations of the Ukrainian government and rebel forces met in Belarus to review and negotiate details on local elections in rebel-held territory. Now, the talks were monitored by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. The delegations also discussed the progress made in the implementation of the Minsk Agreement and the demining campaign underway in Eastern Europe. The case of corruption in FIFA that has recently shaken international football has also reached Peru, with the arrest of the person that for many years was the head of the sport in that country. Our correspondent Raul Morena reports from Peru.
The person known as the most hated man in Peru has been arrested regarding the case of FIFA corruption. He is Manuel Burga, former president of the Peruvian Football Federation.
There are multiple accusations against Burga because of the FIFA Gate case. He is accused of money laundering, he is accused of receiving bribes, not for blackmailing, but for fraudulent information and electronic fraud. And the issue is that he is mentioned even as a member of the conspiring group.
Football is the only sport that moves masses in Peru, even though in the last 3 decades the country has not had significant accomplishments and has not qualified for the World Cup. Burga stayed as president of the federation for more than a decade, and against the will of a great deal of public opinion, who blamed him for the failures. But it has been only recently with the investigation on FIFA that a light has been shined on how much money stopped being invested in the development of the national sport.
The interests managed by the Peruvian Football Federation have been incorrectly sent to money laundering, receiving additional money for its participation. And this has left the Peruvian football practically in a situation of abandonment, where the interests of 4 or 5 corrupt authorities have been prioritized.
With reduced investments, many Peruvians have lost hope in the improvement of the sport in the country.
I'm 45 years old. In these 45 years, I haven't seen us winning any good match.
Very few. I see no persistence, no work done. I see stars, but I don't see a team. It's all been corruption, and football is not only the sport discipline, but also the administrative one.
Currently, the national team is in the second to last spot in the qualifying South American tournament for the World Cup in Russia 2018. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
And that's what we're covering this morning. Plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website. Check it out, telesurtv.net/English. Join us on social media as well, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. From all of us here, have a great morning. We'll see you back here in just a few hours.